Greg, we need to talk.
What?
You have too much music stuff.
No, I don't.
You have 2 violins. You don't even play the violin.
I might learn to play the violin one day.
Give me that. No, I do this because I love you. Have you ever had to have a tough conversation with your family? Tougher than one that's just like, oh, Greg, you have too many guitars, which is not true, by the way. I'm talking something serious. There's times when conversations with family can be awkward, can be weird, can be cringy, but sometimes it's just plain difficult. I'm talking about that kind of tough conversations where you have to admit that maybe someone did something wrong. Maybe someone made a bad decision, someone got hurt, maybe there's a conflict. Those kind of tough conversations. Like we've been saying the past couple of weeks, every family is atypical because no family is perfect, right? And because no family is perfect, every family occasionally has to have a tough conversation. Maybe it's those tough conversations happen because of a difference in opinion, someone made an unwise choice, someone hurt somebody's feelings, or maybe there was just a misunderstanding that needs to be addressed. Typical families either avoid having those conversations altogether, or maybe they'll have them, but they won't go very well. Atypical families, on the other hand, approach their tough family conflicts and conversations differently. For the past few weeks, we've been saying that your family is atypical and that it can be used by God to do some pretty amazing atypical things in the world. But the question is how? And last week, we talked about how atypical families pray for each other when there is a conflict. And today, we're going to discover another thing that atypical families do. So far in this series, we've met 2 families. We've met the family of Adam and Eve, right? The very first family, and the family of Abraham. Both of these families were atypical and imperfect in their own ways. Disobedience to God, lies, murder, conflict, disagreements, arguments, make these stories of these families far from perfect. And today I want to introduce you to another family. It's the family of Isaac and Rebekah and their sons Jacob and Esau. For a little bit of context, Isaac was the son of Abraham, which would make Jacob and Esau Abraham's grandsons. But this story that we're going to read today in Genesis is not the story of Jacob and Esau's brotherly love. It was a pretty imperfect, messed up relationship from the get-go. Genesis chapter 27, verse 1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so dim that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. He said, 'Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die.' Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare for them from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." So right off the bat, we see that things are starting to get a little treacherous. There's some trickery going on here. And if you read on, Jacob says, "Well, look, I look nothing like, and I sound nothing like my brother Esau. I don't have any hair, and Esau's all hairy." And so they make a costume for him so that he will feel like Esau to his father. We see that there's some trickery going on. And just a few verses down, we read this. So he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you found it so quickly, my son?" And he answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, "Well, the voice is Jacob's son, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" And he answered, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it near to him. And he ate, he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him. So Jacob tricks his father into stealing his brother's blessing. And when Esau finds out, he is not too happy about it. Read just a few verses down with me in verse 35. But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." And Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" So this story is a story of deception, of conspiracies, of costumes, of heartbreak, of jealousy. There's a lot going on here, but the bottom line is that with his mom's help, Jacob tricked his brother Esau into giving up his birthright. And then again, with his mom's help, Jacob tricks his dying father into giving him this blessing that was never intended for him. And instead of owning up for his bad behavior, Jacob chooses to run away. Could you imagine being a member of this family? There's a lot of pain, a lot of deceit, a lot of cruelty going on for just one family. But luckily, this is not the end of Jacob and Esau's story. Years later, Jacob is married and he's got children of his own, but he hasn't spoken a word to Esau since the day that he's run away. And now he's on his way to Esau. Now, knowing that Esau would have every reason to hate and maybe even intend on killing him, Jacob decides to send servants, to send messengers to Esau and give him plenty of gifts and just hope that he can forgive him. And in Genesis chapter 32, we read this: "And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, 'Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, female servants. I have sent to tell my lord in order that I may find favor in your sight.' The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, 'We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him.' Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people who were with him, and the flocks and herds and camels into 2 camps, thinking, 'If Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, then the other camp is still left to escape.'" So Jacob is rightfully terrified when he finds out that his brother Esau is coming to meet him. So much so that he divides everything he owns into 2 separate camps, saying, okay, well, if Esau is so mad that he's going to kill me, maybe at least if one camp gets killed, the other camp can get away. Now, I've had some tough family conversations before, but nothing like what is about to go down with Jacob and Esau. Jacob knows that he needs to make things right with his brother, but what could Esau have been thinking here? When conflict happens, but you're too stubborn, too angry, too ashamed, or too afraid to have that tough conversation with your family, it leaves room for some ugly things to grow. It seems like the more time passes, the more and more angry we grow as we get farther out from whatever it is that initially made us frustrated with our family in the first place. And after years and years and years of silence, Esau might grow to hate Jacob enough to kill him. At least that's what Jacob is thinking. But luckily and amazingly, Esau didn't let the years of separation from his brother fill him with hatred, fill him with anger, because just a chapter later in Genesis 33, we read this: "But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And when Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children He said, "Who are these with you?" And Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." And the servants drew near, they and their children, and they bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And last, Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I meet?" And Jacob answered, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." And Jacob said, "No, please, if I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Thus he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you." So it's crazy to me and very atypical that Esau isn't absolutely furious with Jacob right now. As a matter of fact, we see that Esau desires to have a relationship with his brother once again, but this conversation, this interaction could have gone very differently. It would make a lot of sense that Jacob would be afraid to meet with Esau. He was probably ashamed to admit of the wrong that he had done years and years ago, but he was also probably afraid that Esau might retaliate. Esau could have screamed, yelled, kicked, fought, attacked, or even killed his brother Jacob, and it would have been understandable if we're being honest. Jacob had stolen so much from Esau, and he never made it right. But against all odds, Esau didn't show up to try to kill Jacob. He showed up with open arms, ready to have a conversation. Esau's willingness to have a conversation with Jacob, even after all that Jacob had done to him, is pretty amazing, and it was absolutely essential in healing their relationship. Years and years after Jacob and Esau had reconciled, Jesus was preaching a sermon to a group of his followers. And part of this sermon that we read in Matthew chapter 18 was about having tough conversations. Matthew 18:15. "If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you've gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. And if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector." God loves to see us people living at peace with each other. Not the kind of fake peace that you so often see where we smile at each other but secretly hate each other on the inside. I'm talking real, genuine peace. It's like we learned a few weeks ago when we talked about Adam and Eve. God has designed us to be in a relationship, not just with Him, but with each other. And when we refuse to have tough conversations, it separates us from each other. We hang on to that bitterness, to that anger, to that resentment. And not only does it keep us from each other, it also keeps us from having a closer relationship with God too. And throughout this series, we've been saying that if you want God to use your family to do something atypical, sometimes you have to be that first person to do that atypical thing. That's what Esau did in Genesis. And that's what Jesus is teaching us to do right here. When you've hurt or when you've been hurt by someone in your family, the typical response is to stay angry. It's to avoid talking to each other. It's to get bitter. But Esau chose to do the atypical thing. He met with his brother and he had that tough conversation. Now, this might seem like a simple, big idea for this week's lesson, but it's so atypical because not so typical families have tough conversations. Just like a tough conversation changed Jacob and Esau's families for the better, being willing to have a tough conversation can change your family for the better too. Obviously, every family has conflicts, has fights, has arguments, has struggles. But are you going to solve or struggle to solve to make them right? Atypical families should choose to have those tough conversations in order to keep their relationships together. Listen, having tough conversations is not just a thing we do just for the sake of it. It has actual benefits to your relationships with your family because it makes room for healing, for repentance. Maybe you need to apologize for something that you've done wrong, or maybe one of your family members need to apologize for something they've done wrong to you. It helps us learn how to communicate and to understand each other's perspectives, and it also gives us a chance to create a solution together that benefits everyone. But I want you to talk with your family right now about this. How do you go about having tough conversations? Having a tough conversation is difficult. It's in the name, right? A tough conversation. But it doesn't necessarily have to be complicated. It can be as simple as saying, hey, can we talk? I think an important thing that you need to keep in mind for when you need to have those tough conversations is to be patient when people are sharing their feelings, they're sharing their perspectives, and also really listen to someone's point of view. And on the other side, you have to be honest about what you think, about what you feel, even if it's difficult, and you even have to be honest in admitting when you're wrong. The important thing that you need to remember when you have to have those tough conversations is to value a relationship more than being right. Esau was right to be mad at his brother, but he valued his relationship more. Think now about a conflict or an argument that maybe you've had with a family member in the past. Now imagine for a second how that conflict could have been transformed if you were just willing to sit down and have a tough conversation about it. How do you think a tough conversation could change your attitude, could change your perspective, could change the person you're fighting with? Or how do you think a tough conversation could begin to change your family's pattern of behavior in the long term? I know it can be scary to have those tough conversations with your family. Our family members have more power than anyone, not just to make us feel safe and to feel loved, but they also have more power than anyone to hurt us. So here's what I want to challenge and encourage you with this evening, or whenever it is that you're watching this. If you are a parent or a grandparent, aunt, uncle, foster parent, whatever, if you are the parental unit of your household, I want to encourage you to go out of your way to make sure that your kids know that they can talk to you. Listen, it can be intimidating as a kid to try to talk to your parent and to have those and initiate those tough conversations. And you as the parent have the power to impact the lives of your kid like no one else. So make sure that your kids know that they can have those tough conversations with you. And if you're watching and you're a kid, I want to encourage you not to be afraid to have those tough conversations. Not in a mean-spirited or spiteful way, but the kind of tough conversations that's going to really reach towards peace. Listen, you only get one family, and the question is this: do you want to spend your life hating them or loving them? I hope you'll choose to have those tough conversations to reach towards peace and reach towards loving your family, because you only get one. Choose love and let that love be an example to the world about the kind of love that God gives so freely to us. You guys have a fantastic week.